We live?
Sorry, I can only do audio when I join in here. Yes, it should be going live now.
All right, cool. Hello, folks. Jordan Sheridan, Status Coup in the house. I'm really happy to have human rights attorney Stephen Donziger join us. Fortunately, he's been making the rounds with independent media. We're going to talk about the corporate media blackout as well. But I definitely wanted to drill into what's been going on. Really, I mean, I've seen a lot of corrupt stuff, Stephen. I was at Standing Rock. I've covered Flint, the water cover-up and crisis for many years. When I read your story, it sounds like something out of a corrupt third world country, to be honest. You know, we know there's a lot of corruption, or there's been a history of corruption in Mexico and other places. I wanted to first, for the audience, drill down before we get to your case on the atrocities you uncovered, you and other human rights lawyers and activists uncovered in Ecuador, that Chevron resulted in Chevron's, which was Texaco at the time, but Chevron's deliberate pollution and the deaths that resulted.
Well, thank you for having me, Jordan. Thank you for your great journalism. I have a lot of respect for what you do, and I'm really honored to be here today. You know, this story really starts with what happened, the answer to that question, which is, you know, an American oil company, Texaco, now Chevron, went into really one of the most pristine ecosystems in the world, in the Amazon of Ecuador, and made a decision consciously to deliberately dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing toxic waste into the environment, into the waterways, into the water sources that people relied on for their drinking water, you know, for their bathing, for their fishing. And they did it to save money at the expense of the environment, the indigenous peoples who live there, and human life, and animal life, plant life, biodiversity, survival of the planet, just so they can make $3 extra a barrel. It really was a mass industrial poisoning, and it happened systematically and deliberately from 1964 to 1992, when Texaco, during that entire time, was the exclusive operator of 6 oil fields in a 1,500 square mile area. And the worst part, besides the fact this was not an accident, it was a conscious decision to dump, is since they left, it's gotten worse, has not been cleaned up, and continues to poison the ecosystem. People who live there, you know, people who might not be familiar with indigenous culture in the Amazon, you know, most of these peoples don't have money as we know it. It doesn't mean they're poor. I mean, many of them are very prosperous societies historically with no money, because they have everything they need in the forest, you know, clean water and food and animals and, you know, materials to build shelter and medicines, you know, and great deal of satisfaction with life. Okay. And that was like the life for thousands of years. And then in a few short years, Texaco came in and just ruined it all, poisoned it. You know, when the pollution started really in earnest in the early to mid 70s, after they had built hundreds of wells, a lot of the indigenous leaders went to the Texaco engineers and said, what are you doing? You know, what's this black stuff? And their standard response was, oh, don't worry about it. It's like milk. It has vitamins, you know. So when I first went down there in 1993, April of 1993, as part of an investigation team of lawyers and doctors, you know, I knew it was going to be bad. I had no idea. I had no idea that I would see what I saw, which really was an apocalyptic nightmare with massive lakes of black oil on the jungle floor. Texaco had built these unlined waste pits to put oil waste, you know, in the jungle. And they actually built pipes out the sides of them into rivers and streams to deliberately pollute and poison. It was so much worse than I thought. So, you know, I decided I couldn't turn my back on it. And I teamed up with a bunch of other lawyers. And, you know, we ultimately won the case, huge case in 2011, affirmed on appeal by multiple appellate courts, 6 appellate courts. And Chevron in response, committed corrupt acts to lock me up. And here I am. I'm now on day 672 of house arrest in my home on a misdemeanor contempt of court charge filed by a judge who's a former tobacco industry lawyer after his charges were rejected by the regular federal prosecutor, the SDNY here in New York. Go figure. I'm the only person in America with no criminal record locked up in a misdemeanor pretrial. Only one.
And I wanted to ask. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one other point to illustrate the absurdity of this. The longest sentence ever imposed on a lawyer in New York, convicted of criminal contempt of court, is 90 days of home confinement. I mean, no one's even spent a day in jail. And that lawyer, Bruce Cutler, actually did something seriously wrong. And he got 90 days home confinement. I haven't been convicted, and I've had 672 days of home confinement. I am a corporate political prisoner. Make no mistake about it. This is a corporate prosecution. I'm not being prosecuted by the U.S. government. I'm being prosecuted by a private law firm, Seward and Kissel, a woman named Rita Glavin. Chevron is a client of this law firm. And Rita Glavin's other main client is Andrew Cuomo, where she's employed to basically try to undermine the credibility of, his accusers who are accusing him of some form of, sexual misconduct or inappropriate behavior, workplace behavior. So that's what I'm dealing with.
And I wanted to ask you both, because you're on the receiving end, but you're also a lawyer. One of the most bizarre and, to me, corrupt parts of this is once Chevron started going after you, filed the lawsuit against you in New York, claimed with bogus evidence, which we'll get into, that you bribed judges in Ecuador. The prosecutors with the government refused to try the case because they saw how flimsy it was. Ecuador obviously found Chevron guilty. Many other courts internationally on appeal agreed with Ecuador. So people understand, the government sometimes hires private lawyers. Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor in Flint, the state government hired a special prosecutor, a private lawyer. But I've never heard of a federal, state or federal prosecutor rejecting to prosecute something, and then a judge hiring a private law firm to prosecute that person on behalf of the federal government. What is the law behind that?
Well, I don't think that what you just described in my case is legal or constitutional. And that's one of our challenges. One of the ways they get away with this is they deny me a jury. I've been denied a jury in 2 trials now in the United States, and I'm still facing prison because the judge is running this scheme. That's a kind word, scheme. Loretta Preska and Lou Kaplan know that if I get a fair fact finder, their whole scheme will blow up. So the way they keep control is they deny me a jury. They have 2 judges running the whole ship. They appoint a prosecutor who's basically works for Chevron. Preska, who's my judge, is a prominent member of the Federalist Society. Chevron funds the Federalist Society, big funder. Kaplan, who charged me and appointed Preska, has, according to his financial disclosure forms, has investments in Chevron. I'm surrounded by Chevron. I mean, this is a Chevron prosecution. And I think the question we need to ask is, how can a society that purportedly believes in the rule of law, and by the way, I know we have a lot of problems in our justice system, police racism being the most obvious one. Okay, I'm not the only problem. But even with all of our problems, okay, systemic problems and just anecdotal problems, which are numerous, I've never seen a situation where a human rights lawyer, upon being successful in a human rights case, gets prosecuted by the corporation against whom he won a big judgment, prosecuted criminally in the name of the government. Right. I mean, this is illegal under U.S. law and international law. And the Federal Appeals Court does not want, at least at this stage, to stop this from happening. I've gone up there twice and they just have said, sorry, we're going to wait for the trial to play out. We've gone to Merrick Garland. I think this is a huge litmus test for the Biden administration, right? I mean, on the issue of climate, how can they let a lawyer who does the frontline work be locked up on U.S. soil, in this way? So we've gone to Merrick Garland. 6 congresspersons wrote him a letter, including Jamie Raskin and AOC, and Jim McGovern and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and Rashida Tlaib. Didn't want to do anything. I'm the only lawyer in America begging the Department of Justice to prosecute me. Mm-hmm. I want to be prosecuted by a professional. I mean, look, they already turned down the case. So if they took over the case, they would probably dismiss it. But that's not the point. I mean, I can't even talk to this Chevron prosecutor. She doesn't want to have a conversation.
And, another really abnormal thing that doesn't quite pass the legal smell test, I'd like to know your thoughts. So essentially, Chevron's little charade here was they paid millions of dollars to fly somebody in from Ecuador to claim as a witness that you bribed Ecuadorian judges. And this is what the Judge Kaplan, that was the sole evidence that he took to basically continue this forward to charge you with RICO. But that individual then admitted he lied, and he was basically paid millions to come here, that he was prepped by Chevron for 53 days. So in other cases, when, let's say somebody is already imprisoned and evidence comes of their innocence, I mean, it doesn't happen right away, but in many cases they are, set free. So if the sole witness admitted he lied, how is it that they have continued this prosecution against you when their only witness and evidence has admitted it was a lie?
Well, the short answer is because Chevron's running the system in this one narrow place. I mean, I'm not saying Chevron runs the justice system writ large. They do not. I'm not saying corporations run the justice system writ large. They do not. I mean, they have a huge influence over cases. Mm-hmm. But the answer to your question is, when a Chevron lawyer has managed to get control of the prosecutorial machinery of our society to target her client's main critic, is where this gets lost. So, Chevron did pay and really bribed a witness, Alberto Guerra, with $2 million, moved his whole family to New York, prepped him for 53 days through their lawyers at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, including Randy Mastro, Andrea Newman, Reed Brodsky. Okay. And they prepped him to tell this false story, which he told. Kaplan credited it, that I bribed the judge. There was no corroborating evidence, just the words out of his mouth, after he'd been paid by Chevron. And he later admitted lying, and Kaplan never changed his decision. And then that's the basis to go after me for my computer, because after Kaplan ruled I bribed the judge, which has been rejected by 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada, by the way, but after he ruled that, he let Chevron recover millions of dollars of court costs from me for having won this non-jury civil case over criminal allegations. And then when I couldn't pay these court costs because I don't have that kind of money, he let them go look at my computer to see if I had hidden money. That was their theory. And it was all pretext. And when I resisted, he locked me up. So this is serious. I mean, this goes so far beyond me. This is in my view, a new corporate playbook to use and deploy against successful advocates who go after the fossil fuel polluters. And now you might ask, well, why hasn't this happened to anyone before? Well, I would argue no one's been as successful as our little team in winning a large multi-billion-dollar judgment against a polluter. So, they're trying out this little experiment with this judge. And it's, in my view, it's totally illegal and corrupt. I mean, bribing a witness to claim I bribed a judge is the real racketeering, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that guy accused me of being a racketeer. And that's what Judge Kaplan found. But their whole Their whole scheme is the real racketeering.
And there's other anomalies, or just corruption. The decision for who should be the judge in the case is supposed to be random, but
Right.
Judge Kaplan specifically appointed the current judge, who, as you said, was heavily involved with the Federalist Society, which gets a lot of money from Chevron. And you not having a jury, or not being able to have a jury, is also fairly unheard of. Can you talk about those 2 points, that they seem to have, rammed through a judge that would not be ideal for you, and denying you a jury?
Well, the denying of the jury is a damn outrage. The idea that a lawyer could go to prison without a jury trial is disgusting. Anyone, for that matter, but a lawyer? And of course, controlling who the judge is critical to the scheme. I mean, Chevron doesn't want a real case. They want a case that's pre-cooked, as this one is. I will get convicted. And then they want the trial, to kind of look like it's a veneer of due process over what's actually a pre-cooked, corrupt decision made behind closed doors. Now, we wouldn't let them do that. I have had a trial, although there's no decision yet. I will get convicted one of these days coming up soon. But we wouldn't let them get away with it. I had a really good legal team: Ron Kuby, Marty Garbus, challenged the hell out of the judge every step of the way. She was reading the newspaper from the bench while witnesses were testifying. Again, there was no jury. The jury was filled with journalists. Where I should have had a jury, there were journalists covering the trial. But controlling who the judge is just critical to the outcome of a legal case. And if a corporation like Chevron can do that, they're going to do it. And they have done that in this case, no doubt about it. Loretta Preska is not a neutral judge. She's biased. Mm-hmm. She's tied into Chevron, and she's pro-corporate, and she's, she wouldn't let us even have Zoom access so my clients in Ecuador could watch the trial on the via streaming. She wouldn't let me testify. I mean, she ruled that my reasons for withholding the computer, which was to protect the privileged information of my clients, to protect their bodily integrity, because Chevron we've had death threats down there. My decision was ethically grounded, no doubt. I mean, no lawyer I know of has ever been ordered to turn over his computer and cell phone to adversary counsel, but me. She wouldn't let me claim
those communications and documents are subject to attorney-client privilege.
Exactly. She wouldn't let me testify to that. She said the only issue is whether you did or did not obey the order. I mean, it's like fascism. It's like, I order you to turn over all your confidential case files, and I'm a judge. Well, Your Honor, I'm going to challenge that on appeal. Mm-hmm. And then they lock me up and find me guilty because I didn't do it, even though I was seeking more judicial review in an appropriate, ethical, principled, traditional way. It's just extraordinary. She wouldn't let me defend myself in the trial. So I didn't testify. We just cut the trial. Fabulous on appeal. I know, but her games to just cause me so much harm in the meantime.
Colin, is that his internet?
Yes.
Hold on, folks. I'm gonna try to smooth out Steven's internet there. I hope it's not the intelligence or Chevron doing that. Let me tell him. Yeah, hold on. Internet started going out, in and out. Currently. While we're waiting for Stephen to come back, I actually was going to ask him about this, but it's a good segue. I want to show something Susan Sarandon said outside the courthouse. She was coupled with indigenous people, activists trying to support Stephen Donziger. Let's play that clip with Susan Sarandon.
This company, first Chevron now, has paid millions of dollars, which they could have used to restore this water, which they could have used to make up for this horrible racist dumping into the Amazon. And instead they chose to silence and persecute Stephen. Why? Because it's also a signal to other activists, to other people who are trying to save our environment, that you will have dire consequences if you open your mouth and if you take legal action.
I think we have Stephen back. How you doing?
Good. Sorry about that.
No problem. I just played the Susan Sarandon clip in the meantime, but I wanted to ask you, I see it's very different, but I see parallels to the Julian Assange case. They wouldn't allow it to be anybody to watch it through Zoom, even journalists. I mean, you had to give your blood to get access to Julian Assange's trial. The judge didn't follow the law, even in Britain, in terms of what could be introduced in. Do you see, I mean, in some way, you are a human rights lawyer, but you also are a whistleblower. Do you see any parallels between what the international in the UK and American government has done with Julian Assange and what's being done to you right now?
I mean, I'm shaking my head. I mean, when the system wants to neutralize an important voice, it seems to be able to find ways to do that.
Right.
I mean, Julian's a journalist who exposed, corruption at the highest levels of the national security state. And, I think he's at a much higher level in terms of the threat than I am. I mean, I'm a human rights lawyer who wouldn't turn over his computer, to Chevron. But, what's sort of elevated my case is Chevron's ability as a major oil company to gain control of the state, to attack me. Julian's just being attacked directly by the state, by the U.S. government, and with the help of the British government.
Right.
So, and the help of the Swedish government, the help of various governments that are very threatened by the way he works, and so I think, and by the way, there's a lot of people around the world, right, who get attacked in this way that have less attention paid to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see this all the time in Latin America, where I do a lot of work with environmental defenders who just, flat out murdered. I mean, they don't even bother with ersatz court proceedings. They just murder people.
Right.
And I want to acknowledge those people. Global Witness documented 219 murders last year of environmental defenders around the world. That's what I am. I'm an earth defender. That's my work in Ecuador. I do it kind of in court. I have a Harvard law degree, so I have the appearance of someone who might be sophisticated in the law, but my work is no different than someone who organizes a protest outside a pipeline in Honduras. It's all the same. I think what bothered Chevron most is our ability to connect indigenous people in the Amazon who had no money. Remember, I said they were rich, but they had no money.
Right.
And money is the currency in the world of professional services. So they had no way to get lawyers without money. And to connect the shamans of the forest with sophisticated US lawyers and sophisticated Canadian lawyers and Argentinian lawyers and Ecuadorian lawyers in Quito. And then you throw into the mix wealthy individuals and even hedge funds that wanted to invest in this as a social justice mechanism. That was terrifying to the oil industry.
Right.
You know, because they count on indigenous peoples either A, never bringing the case because they can't pull together the resources, or never bringing the case because they don't know how to find a lawyer. And they just, so when they calculate how they do business, and this is no doubt what Chevron did in Ecuador, like, well, we can just dump. We'll never have to pay for this. We'll privatize the profits, socialize the costs onto the indigenous peoples, and you know what, who cares? And I guarantee that's what they thought. And it's environmental racism, but it's also more than that. It's just a pure economic calculation based on their assessment of risk in the 60s and 70s. You know, they actually experienced what we did as some sort of unfair thing. Because, like, you know, when they went in there and decided to dump, they're like, well, this is the state of play and we'll never have to pay. So when we went to court, they're like, you can't do this. We already left Ecuador and this was our contract. I'm like, no, people are dying right now because of what you did years ago. You have to deal with the damage, you know? And so, you know, the scary part is the way they've been able to take control of the state, a private company, to lock me up. And, you know, Julian has a similar set of issues. But, you know, the only way to stop this kind of abuse of the law is people being aware of it and citizen outcry and citizen organizing. You know, it used to be, sorry to go on and on, but I find this fascinating. It used to be in a liberal society, the courts were the bulwark to protect individual rights, you know, and to some degree they are. I'm not condemning courts generally. But what blows my mind is the way a corporation or the national security state can actually shoehorn a court to carry out an agenda that actually has nothing to do with protecting individual rights, but has to do with suppressing them.
Right.
And that's the danger part. You know, look, people aren't surprised to see this. No disrespect to my many Russian friends, but you see this in Russia with Putin. They make up legal cases against Navalny and the political opponents of Putin. You see this in Saudi Arabia, obviously, with what's his name? Forget that guy's initials.
MBS, yeah.
MBS. You see it in Turkey with Erdogan. A lot of places.
Right.
So that element of sort of weaponizing the judiciary in a violent way to stop people from doing their work, to exposing corruption, to me is where we need to have more focus.
Right. And to me, you know, I always say the corporate media exists to cover up what they should be covering. There's a media aspect here. You recently learned that there might be a pretty corrupt reason that the New York Times has not covered this whatsoever, despite you living in New York, despite it's getting around on social media. They're certainly aware of it, but the paper, paper of record has not covered this. Could you kind of tell the audience what you've recently learned?
Yeah, I'm going to address this to Dean Baquette, who's the editor of the New York Times. Dean, you got to do better, okay? Basically, the lead lawyer for the New York Times on press issues is a guy named Ted Boutros. Ted Boutros is the same guy who works for Chevron law firm Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, who has billed Chevron millions of dollars to attack me, to deny my First Amendment rights while purporting to represent the New York Times protecting its First Amendment rights. And I find it really curious that, you know, journalists fly in from Europe to interview me in my apartment, and the New York Times is literally a 30-minute walk down Broadway. I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and no one's come for 2 years. And, you know, no matter what you think of me, I mean, I hope people have a relatively decent opinion of me, but even if you hate me, who the hell can deny that having a Harvard law grad locked up for 2 years without trial on a misdemeanor who won the biggest environmental case ever is not a newsworthy story? I mean, I guarantee the readership of the New York Times wants to read that story. You know, so Ted Boutros is back there killing the story. Chevron is a major advertiser of the New York Times. They're a big client of T-Bram, which is the New York Times ad agency. And I've seen this time and time again. Reporters get interested in my story, and then they just go away. They stop calling. It happened to ABC News a few months ago. Did a long interview with a reporter, going to publish it on the ABC News website, and he just disappeared.
Wow.
You know, and the one big outlet on the broadcast side that's covered this is a comedy show. It's a Daily Show with Trevor Noah.
Right.
You know, it's like that's like the one kind of safe place in the corporate media constellation where you can cover serious issues. Right. I mean, CNN hadn't been here, nor has MSNBC or any of the other networks.
Right.
Look, if I was sitting in, you know, in Moscow or in, you know, Istanbul, there's a good chance they would have covered me.
Absolutely. If it was tied to Russia, that kind of thing. Absolutely.
I mean, Navalny gets a ton of publicity in the New York Times front page stories. And, you know, good for him, because I think he's getting totally screwed. And he's a human rights victim. But so am I. And I'm here in Manhattan and being totally ignored by the New York Times.
And, you know, to me, what's going on with you is part of a broader trend in the last broader acceleration, I would say, in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, I was at Standing Rock for several months on and off, and I was in disbelief. You mentioned fascism before, that essentially public police paid for by the taxpayer were there on behalf of the oil company, assaulting, you know, Native Americans, environmental activists, firing grenades, tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, you know, the people that got PTSD injured. And then from advancing towards that, you've seen all these states, you know, mostly Republican, trying to create laws that essentially felonize protest. You know, laws that would even, in some states, allow you to run over a protester and not be held liable. We just saw the other day Native Americans in Minnesota, other environmental activists demonstrating against the Line 3 pipeline, and you got Department of Homeland Security helicopters flying over them. I believe that's part of the Biden administration now. Could you kind of talk about, I mean, the oil companies, fossil fuel companies, who I believe are on their last leg, they seem to have complete control now of local, state, and federal government, to the point of creating laws that would have essentially stopped the First Amendment.
You know, it's complex. Yes, that is happening. I mean, there are all these punishment enhancement laws passed because of oil industry lobbyists that, you know, enhance punishments against people who protested oil pipelines or oil installations. It's a total violation of the First Amendment, in my view. But they're getting state legislatures to pass them. And, you know, the justice always lags behind the injustice, right? So like they get the laws passed, and then someone's going to have to get arrested and challenge it in court. And it'll take years to get rid of these terrible laws. You know, in the meantime, how many people are going to suffer or be discouraged from protesting as a result, you know? And that's what they're doing to me too. I mean, I think ultimately they think the Ecuadorians will collect on their judgment, but, you know, they're buying 10, 15 years of use of their capital, and they're trying to weaponize me to intimidate other people into not doing the work, you know? So yeah, the level of power is shocking. It's a function of dark money politics to a great degree. I think one of the best books ever written about the state of American society was Jane Mayer's book, Dark Money. If you haven't read it, you got to read it. It's like a horror story about how, you know, the Koch brothers and others are controlling our society through these secret donations. Federalist Society being one of them, and many others. But, there's a whole dark money thing going on in America that the fossil fuel industry is very much a part of, where they're able to quietly, largely out of public view, control the Congress, control many state legislatures, lobby the hell out of executive branch agencies such that very little can get done. And now they're trying to control the federal judiciary, and I'm seeing that in my case.
Right.
The helicopter thing is terrible. I saw the video of that. Remember, it's the same thing that happened in D.C. during the Black Lives Matter protests after the George Floyd murder.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that, but some unmarked helicopter was like flying, 20 feet above the heads of protesters in D.C., to intimidate them. I mean, who does that?
Right.
So I think we're in a dangerous point. Listen, the fossil fuel industry is structurally in major decline and ultimately will be phased out. I mean, I personally believe our government should nationalize the industry and phase it out. It's destroying our planet. Okay. They cannot function responsibly doing what they do. But on the way out, they are going to try to extract every goddamn dollar they can. And they plan on doing it for another many, many years. So even in the Ecuador case, like the idea of having to write a check to shamans in the rainforest for a few $1 billion, like, no, not going to do that. And, we'd rather spend $2 billion paying lawyers to not pay $5 billion or $10 billion. And that's their thinking. I mean, it's an industry that, as a matter of its fundamental business model, in my experience, not just Chevron, Exxon, Shell, BP, they don't respect court judgments unless, of course, they win them.
Right.
And they'll just keep fighting and fighting. They'd rather pay lawyers to fight than actually pay the money they owe to people they harm, people they poison, like happened in Ecuador.
And I think also you mentioned dark money. I mean, same thing with bankers, big pharma, fossil fuels. If they know the worst that's going to happen is they're going to get hit with a mega fine, but they're not going to face any jail time. I mean, Martin Scarelli is like one of the few I can remember that scummy big pharma bro who was imprisoned, but there's no bankers in jail from what happened a decade ago. Wells Fargo has been, engaging in fraudulent behavior in recent years. Nobody's going to jail. Same thing with these fossil fuel companies. So because they have essentially bought the government, it's kind of baked into their business operations. We might have to, pay in some cases hundreds of billions, in other cases, a couple billion, but there's no criminal deterrent.
That's exactly right. I mean, paying a $4 billion fine when you profited $25 billion is a pretty minor cost of doing business,
right?
For a crime. And I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a total under enforcement of the law against individual corporate criminals in our society. I would describe what Chevron did in Ecuador to be a crime. No one's been prosecuted except the guy who held them accountable, meaning me. And that creates a major misalignment of incentives. I mean, it basically, companies like Chevron then over-drill, over-pollute, because they think they're never going to get caught, or if they do, they'll just get a slap on the wrist and pay a small fine. So government should be the entity that protects the people. And what's happened in my lifetime is government has become just another tool of corporate power for the most part. I mean, again, it's complex. There's a lot of great people in government and Congress. I get that. But as institutionally, the reason nothing seems to ever really get done in a serious way, and we're seeing it now with the Biden agenda, the corporations have too much power over our governmental institutions, in my view.
All right. And two more questions. I mean, just direct message to Biden, Merrick Garland. Biden has said a lot about, we're going to let up Trump's attacks on journalists. That hasn't really happened. Said I'm going to have an independent Department of Justice. But from what you're describing, they're not paying much mind to you and your supporters. Aggressive push to get this case moved back to the government handling the prosecution. What's your message to President Biden?
Please look at this. I mean, this matters, okay? It matters on two levels. One is, I'm going to talk personally. I mean, they're trying to destroy me and my family in the United States of America, and I'm a human rights lawyer, okay? Can't let this happen to any individual. But more than that, they're trying to stop this work from happening in a broader sense, such that they will continue to pollute the planet for more years than they should. And that's going to completely undermine what you say is your agenda on climate. You can't be addressing the climate issue and letting those who do the frontline work to protect the planet be locked up in this part of this bogus corporate run scheme in the United States of America. So, I think this is a major litmus test for Biden and Merrick Garland, and they need to take this case out of the hands of the Chevron prosecutor and prosecute it themselves. And I believe dismiss it and free me. But at a minimum, take it out of the hands of a totally flagrantly conflicted law firm that has Chevron as a client and is prosecuting Chevron's main critic in the name of the public. That's just not cool. That's not America. It's not rule of law. So deal with it. You are a failure, I will say, on climate unless you deal with this particular piece of the problem and others, but this is a big piece.
And lastly, I think a lot of people watching, I know I felt this way, during the beginning of the coronavirus. I was in, New York City. I could leave my apartment. I usually did like once a day, but for the most part, I was kind of confined in the apartment. And for me, I honestly was kind of depressed. I know a lot of people were. So extrapolate that to nearly 2 years of house arrest. You're a human being. So, and I'm not trying to get personal, but I mean, can you explain kind of the daily situation there? I'm sure you've, felt depression and being stir crazy, and it's a psychological imprisonment too. What are you doing to kind of move, try and pass the time and make the best of it, I guess?
Well, definitely, locking up an innocent person is a form of psychological warfare on them, meant to destabilize and demoralize them from doing their work. Look, I am fortunate in that I have a lot of people who care, who have come to visit me, starting with my family, my wife and son, Laura and Matthew, extending out to so many other people. I mean, that's kind of the irony, isn't it? Like, before they did this, like, hardly anyone knew who the hell I was. Now, like, I can't, I'm doing interviews. I mean, the big media is ignoring me, but like on the independent media like this, I'm doing tons of interviews, getting a lot of support from around the world, not just the United States. I mean, 68 Nobel laureates have signed a statement demanding my release. Lawyers are flocking to represent me pro bono. Top lawyers. People are outraged, So that kind of solidarity works miracles in terms of keeping my spirits high. And I also have an incredible belief that we will get through this soon, and I'll be able to get my passport back. By the way, they took that as well. Mm-hmm. And continue working on what I'm really passionate about, which is helping people deal with their human rights problems.
Right.
But I'd be lying if I said it was easy. It's not. It requires a huge amount of fortitude. Just so people understand, I have a black ankle bracelet shackled to my lower leg that was put on August 6, 2019, and has only come off one time for like a minute when it was changed once. We had to change the equipment. So I sleep with it, I eat with it, it beeps, it talks to me when the battery runs low, wakes us up in the middle of the night sometimes. The state is on my body. For all I know, it listens to my conversations. I mean, I don't know what the hell that thing does. But imagine having Big Brother attached to you 24/7. That's what it is. I mean, I've got a black claw on my ankle.
You've got Chevron on there.
I haven't even been able to put on shorts for 2 years because it's embarrassing.
Right.
People to see it. And my son sometimes gets embarrassed when his friends come over and his dad has this thing, so I have to wear long pants.
Right.
Or cover it up with a blanket, when we're watching TV. And there's all sorts of shit, man. It's like taking my son to play. I get out to take my son to things, with permission of the court 48 hours in advance. So like I can get out for 2 hours or do the very narrow things. But I once took him to play a basketball game at a high school that had metal detectors to get into the gym. And like, so you walk over there like, shit, it's going to buzz. Everyone's going to see it. His friends are going to see it. And like, it just creates anxiety.
Right.
On all the little things. But, at this point, I've gotten used to it. And in a weird way, I'm proud of it. I mean, when I sat in court during my trial, I put my leg up, I lifted it up, and I wanted everyone to see my ankle bracelet. It is an embarrassment to them, as far as I'm concerned, that they are putting that on me. But,
absolutely,
we try to create happiness every day in our home in one form or another, and I think we're pretty successful at it.
Good. How could people help, Stephen? Tell them where to go to donate, support.
Thank you for asking. We have a website, donzigerdefense.com. We actually have a couple of websites, but the best one is donzigerdefense.com, DONZIGER, defense, one word. And you can join the campaign or you can donate. First of all, I want to thank everyone who has donated because the response has been amazing. I've had literally over 7,000 people donate an average of, $20 over the last couple of years. And it costs a lot to deal with what they're throwing at me, even though most of the lawyers are working pro bono, not everybody can. And, there's expenses are high and I've been deprived of my ability to earn a living. So we're asking people to help, even if it's $5, $1, $3, $10. Please give. And even if you can't give, join the campaign. You'll get our emails and you'll be able to keep up to date on the case and actions that we're asking people to take on my behalf.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll stay in touch and I'll keep covering this. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah. Thank you, Jordan. Take care.
Sure. So that was Stephen Donziger, who is nothing short of a corporate political prisoner here in the United Corporations of America. The story is just, honestly, it's so corrupt that you can't even believe it. Like when I've read the story and looked into it, I mean, it's corrupt for even America's corrupt standards. But I do believe there will be a groundswell thanks to independent media. I think at some point, independent media is going to force corporate media to have to cover this. And I do think, it's likely that he will face jail time for this, but I do think at some point, Chevron will have to pay for what they've done. I really do believe that because it's so beyond the pale. So we'll keep covering it here and stay in touch with Stephen. And we'll clip that out too into smaller parts. I thought the part where I asked him about whether, I felt some of what he's dealing with has parallels to Julian Assange. And it was clear that he got a little emotional for a while and had to pause. This is, whether it's being done to journalists like Julian, human rights attorneys, this is the status quo elite bending the law, breaking the law to stop the ugly truth from coming out, whether it's on war crimes or the fossil fuckers killing people. People died in Ecuador from Chevron dumping heinous waste in the Amazon. They're still, as he pointed out, drinking contaminated water. So it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. So thank you to Susan Sarandon and others Roger Waters and others who have been out front demanding his this prosecution to end. Wanted to move on. I got one other topic: manufacturing consent on steroids. Manufacturing consent on steroids. We got 360 people watching. Make sure you press that like button. Super chats welcome. A quick PSA. I don't want to upset my Status Coup members, but unfortunately, we're going to have to postpone the members call. I know we did this last night and are doing it again. The reality is we're not going to do the members call without the whole team, Jen and I. That's why it's the members call. So you have the ability to talk to us both. And honestly, right now and this is on me for pushing it this week, it's not the best time for us because Jen in particular is really, really working night and day to plan this reporting trip we're trying to take next week, which will include, talking to people possibly facing eviction, talking to people who are about to lose unemployment prematurely, homeless people, just people who are economically screwed in this corrupt United Corporations of America. So we don't want to disappoint you, but we usually want to go for like 2 hours. Sometimes we go longer than 2 hours, and there's just not enough hours in the day right now as Jen plans that trip. And I'm working on a Joe Manchin story, actually. So stay tuned for that. So as a payback, we're going to try to do 2 calls this month. We're going to try one of them while we're on the road, too. So we don't want you to think as a member, you're not getting what you're paying for. So we're shooting for 2 calls this month, with one of them possibly being on the road if it works out. So it is via Zoom. That doesn't mean you can't sign up as a member now. We're close to 1,900. Support our journalism. Support independent investigative journalism. As you see, YouTube suppressing us. It's on the bottom of the screen, statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for $5 a month. Also, if you haven't signed up yet, go to our Substack, statuscoup.substack.com, statuscoup.substack.com. I've been pumping out great stories on Amazon, breaking stories. I'm currently working on something about Mr. Manchin and the corrupt West Virginia Democratic Party. So stay tuned for that. You could sign up at our Substack for free. You could also sign up paid. Some articles will be for paid members. A lot of them will be for everybody. That's another way we could kind of get around this YouTube suppression by building another revenue stream. We've already had members that are paying members to Status Coup that have also signed up for the Substack. So I totally appreciate that double whammy of you supporting us both as a Status Coup member and as a Substack subscriber. Obviously, not everybody could do that, but I'm really enjoying it. Writing has always been a passion for me that I wasn't able to do at TYT, and I haven't been able to do here up until now. But I really love, written stories in addition to this live streams and on-camera work. So thank you. Sire, $6.99, additional incentive to support independent media. MSM makes money by keeping us ignorant of these issues. Thank you, Status Coup. Oh, we're about to talk about the corporate media because I saw some crap today that was manufacturing consent on steroids. So, and by the way, you could also go to statuscoup.live. Statuscoup.live is the new page. Colin, if you have that up and you can show it, that's a page you could go to and donate directly. They take a lot less than YouTube does with super chats. So we're trying to get people into the habit of going to statuscoup.live. So statuscoup.live, Jen redid the page. Definitely check it out. Donate if you can. So I want to move on. A lot of progressives have been openly, including me, openly criticizing the OG, Bernie Sanders, who said, hold your nose, vote for Biden, and on day one, we'll fight him. That's what Bernie said. That's also what the squad said. However, and I'm not going to get into particulars, but I have sources attached to Bernie in Bernie world who have said it's quite the contrary, to the point of pathetic. So Bernie, as Biden, has backed away from a $15 minimum wage, backed away from a $2,000 checks, has now forgotten the phrase public option, continuing the fracking all over the country, using his Department of Homeland Security to terrorize Native American demonstrators in Minnesota the other day. Bernie's been kind of quiet. Bernie's been quiet on, on the fight against Biden. He's been, routinely tweeting and going on social media against Republican obstruction, but not particularly discussing or pushing back on Biden very plainly abandoning the few campaign promises that he made. I mean, $15 minimum wage was one of the only promises he made. $2,000 checks, it's on tape. Public option was what he was pushing with his propaganda on the Democratic debate stage. Calling Bernie radical and it's too much money, we're going to do a public option. That's off the table. Bernie really didn't push back when Biden preemptively surrendered, claiming, we can't put the $15 minimum wage into the COVID relief bill because the unelected Senate parliamentarian whose opinions are only advisory, not binding, said so. So naturally, the corporate media created a bizarre report about how much influence Bernie Sanders has on the Biden administration. I mean, I hope you don't have an empty stomach right now. Colin, if we could pull this up. Bernie Sanders has real influence. Vermont's longtime outsider has become a trusted voice in Biden's White House. A voice for what? Where to put the carpet? And listen, I love Bernie. I respect what he's done, but I'm not going to fray from calling him out. I mean, I'll read some of it. It's just propaganda beyond the pale. At first glance, they seem like an odd couple. Bernie Sanders, the progressive and quintessential outsider, and President Biden, moderate politician and political insider. And yet, the 79-year-old Vermont senator has become a key voice in the Biden administration, called upon, consulted, and indispensable in keeping the liberal Democratic flock in line. Oh, the flock. After 30 years in Congress and 2 presidential runs, it's a new experience. Quote, as somebody who wrote a book called Outsider in the House, yes, it is a strange experience to be having that kind of influence that we have now, Sanders told CNN. The Biden-Sanders connection is not a love story. It's more a marriage of convenience. But as Biden pushes an unprecedented progressive White House agenda, it's crucial. It's also personal. You see this framing, an unprecedented progressive White House agenda? What? What's unprecedented? The $1.9 trillion Band-Aid to an economic gunshot wound? That millions of people are about to be evicted at the end of the month and Biden and the Democrats aren't doing a goddamn thing about it? That the Democrats and Biden are cheering on people losing their unemployment despite people not at all being made whole yet from the damage this pandemic has done. And by the way, workers already reporting that they're being forced back to work in unsafe conditions, still with a pandemic going on. Yes, much reduced, but cases still out there. CNN and MSNBC have been framing this Biden sweeping overhaul, progressive legislation. All of this is bullshit, corporate neoliberalism theater. Let's get back to this story. We have a good relationship, Sanders told Borger. He wants to be a champion of working families, and I admire and respect that. Has somebody hacked Bernie's mind? He wants to be a champion of working families, and I admire that and respect that. As a result, Sanders has entered Biden's political tent. Quote, I could tell you that Bernie Sanders has real influence in the White House, senior Biden advisor Cedric Richmond told Borger. Senator Sanders is respected. That respect is mutual. Quote, one of the things that struck me about Joe Biden is a very strong sense of loyalty, which I like and respect. Quote, he's more conservative than I am, obviously, Bernie said. But on the other hand, he's not only a smart guy, he is a good politician who has a sense of where people are and what is possible. And I think he understands that at this particular moment in American history, where working families face so many problems, you've got to go big, not small. I can't really stomach any more of that. But what is amazing to me about this, and there was an accompanying CNN segment. I don't have it, the video, but it was more nauseating than the written article, actually, is, you know, you could call Bernie whatever you want. Some call him a sellout, a coward, fraud, whatever. I've always called him incredibly naive. But you can't be this naive. He can't be this naive. If Bernie Sanders, and obviously, by the way, Biden's administration probably wanted to get this on CNN. They want to frame that Bernie is on board with Biden so they could try and, you know, keep progressives or fool progressives into thinking, you know, oh, well, Bernie likes what Joe Biden's doing. Bernie thinks it's super progressive. Bernie thinks he's a champion of the working class or whatever bullshit he just said. But at the end of the day, what happened when between Bernie Sanders saying, we're going to fight him on day one. Let's get rid of Trump. We're going to fight him on day one. And he's a champion of the working class and I have influence on him. Well, if you have influence on him, you got pretty weak influence because he's abandoned the $15 minimum wage. It's nowhere to be heard. He doesn't discuss the public option whatsoever. He wants to give police more money as they're executing black men all the time. He in his infrastructure deal that he's waxing poetic to get Republican support, he's taking out some of the climate catastrophe policies that would have been in there and lowering the overall price. To really do something, you need to spend $7 to $10 trillion. He's now talking about spending less than $2 trillion. So I don't know, you know, maybe they have dinner together. Maybe they have good conversation. Maybe Biden wasn't as dismissive to Bernie and progressives as Queen Hillary was. But if this is influencing him, you're doing a bad job. Straight up, you're doing a bad job. And, you know, what particularly the phrasing in that story that particularly unsettles me a little bit too. Obviously, this is just CNN's framing. But when he says Bernie's helping to keep the progressive flock in check, I'm certainly not making any excuses for what I'm starting to call the surrender squad. But, you know, Bernie is a reason a lot of the squad got into politics. They deeply respect Bernie and admire Bernie. Obviously, they talk. So if Bernie, whatever you want to call it, is naive enough to think he has influence, or as some of you in the chat are saying, maybe he's just tired, which I've gotten that description from some in his world. Well, if he's trying to keep, I don't want to say keep the squad in line, but sell the squad on, no, we could work with him, you know, think the long game. That might be part of why, you know, AOC, who said, let's bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party, and Rashida Tlaib, who's clearly a fighter, Ilhan Omar, same thing. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, who I've covered when she was an activist. She's a fighter. I'm not making excuses for them because I think it's inexcusable how they've folded like a cheap tent and put up zero fight. Don't even threaten to withhold their vote. Jamal Bowman just kind of alluded to possibly withholding his vote from a police reform bill if qualified immunity is not it. Didn't go as far to say, I'm not voting for it. And it's really, you know, for me, as somebody who's, you know, early days of in the field reporting, we're covering Bernie's campaign in 2016. The special movement that was born from that, the euphoria that was in the air at those rallies, The babies I saw with Bernie gear, older progressives who were just waiting for decades for somebody like Bernie to reinvigorate them, new people that were never involved with politics who came in. It's sad to see what he's become. I don't think it's as simple as just saying, oh, he's sold out or he's corrupt. I think he's just tired. And he thinks at this point, I think he's bought into, I'd rather get something incremental than fight for much bigger, which is kind of the antithesis to his whole philosophy. Because this influence that he has, all he's getting is, if incremental is a generous term, I don't even think he's getting much incrementally. Again, nothing on a minimum wage, nothing on any form of UBI. Biden's not doing a damn thing about the evictions that are about to happen and the foreclosures that will happen soon, mimicking his BFF Obama, who let millions get foreclosed on during the financial crash. So this is disgusting manufacturing consent. It's counterfactual because it's not factual. I think this teaches, I think it's important for progressives to learn lessons, even in defeat, even in disappointment. And the lesson that I've learned, because I'm a journalist, but I was also a human. And in 2016 and 2020, sometimes you feel this one politician, this one person could be what brings us to the promised land. And I think a lot of people even feel that way about Nina Turner, who I like a lot. But even Nina Turner, Bernie, AOC, all these people, you can never put all your faith and stock into singular politicians or political groups. You have to put your faith and your stock in each other to literally light an inferno under all of their behinds continually. Whether you like them or not, whether you agree on policy or not, if they're not going to fight for you, which is what they campaigned on, then you have to pressure them or support others that will get them out of office. I mean, I'm not calling to primary anybody, but if it continues, I'll definitely interview primary opponents, if there are, on the progressive side, to Squad, Ro Khanna, others. I'm not a loyal soldier boy. So it's really disappointing. It's really disappointing. And I hope the hardcore progressive audience that watches Status Coup and others are not fooled by this. I hope other progressives who might not be as politically astute, who believe in Medicare for all, who believe in, a much higher minimum wage, climate catastrophe is top on their mind, care deeply about the police terrorism. I hope they're not being fooled by this unprecedented progressive sweeping change that Biden is ushering in, which is a bunch of bullshit. And I hope they are not going along just because the point of this is to get those progressives to follow Bernie. If Bernie says he's okay, then I'm okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. So, just terrible. Just terrible. On a more positive note, there is breaking news. The Keystone XL pipeline officially canceled by TC Energy, which used to be TransCanada. The Keystone XL pipeline officially canceled by TC Energy following indigenous-led activism. And credit to Biden, he did shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. He isn't touching the Dakota Access pipeline. He's allowing his Department of Homeland Security and Border Control to terrorize Native Americans and environmental activists in Minnesota. We saw the helicopters, the DHS helicopters flying over water protectors the other day. But Biden did stop the Keystone XL pipeline. Let's give credit to the environmental movement that pressured Obama to cancel it, that fought in court for a decade to stop it. But now officially, the Canadian oil company has canceled the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline, which to me shows we can win. Progressives can win. And a lot of progressives are despondent. And a lot of progressives have baked into the cake is deep cynicism. And I understand it because I have a very healthy dose of cynicism. But pressure campaigns do work, but they have to be large. They have to be organized. They have to have smart strategy for digital and social media, and they have to be consistent. And the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe has been in court for the last 4.5, 5 years now, continuing to try and stop the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is still in business. It usually takes 5, 10, some cases, multiple decades to finally stop these things. I wish it wasn't that way. But take this as one positive sign that real pressure campaigns can work. So credit to the early environmental activists, Greenpeace, other groups that fought this. And let's hope they adopt from this and now move on, stopping Line 3, shutting down the Dakota Access Pipeline. Again, let's not rely on any one politician. Organize together. Organize together. You know, Crystal Ball, for example, on her new show, Breaking Points, which is great. Would love to come on, by the way. I think she did a segment today on a low-key general strikes going on right now. There's a strike going on in Alabama, strikes going on elsewhere among coal miners and other workers. So there is economic protest happening in this country. There are workers beginning to strike. There is more mutual aid campaigns to aid those workers who are striking. So it might not be a general strike tomorrow, but there is movement in the outside game, outside of the political system. And workers finally saying, as Bernie used to say, enough is enough. So, yes, defend the earth and let's not give up. Because if we're just going to give up, there's really no point. Fight the good fight, including here at Status Coup. So, a couple things before I go. Remember, folks, we are currently planning a big road trip. We're tentatively calling it the other pandemic, trying to focus on people, interview people facing evictions, about to lose their unemployment insurance, homeless, have gone into heavy debt because of the pandemic. Name your economic injustice. I just reached out to Breonna Taylor's aunt and family to try and set up an interview because I want to stay on that story. So we might head over to Louisville, Kentucky, too. That is a super important story. Still no justice for Breonna. Her birthday recently passed. So we want to go there. Thinking about going to West Virginia, too. Maybe interview Paula Jean Swearingen, some others. Dig a little deeper into Mr. Manchin's corruption. So we're currently planning it. We definitely need your support. We definitely need your support. So please support us. Colin, if you can, I just want to read this so people have all the information. Hold on. If you could pull this story up. In the meantime, what I was saying is please, if you can, go to statuscoup.live, support us at any amount, statuscoup.live. Road trips are expensive. Got to pay the car bills, got to pay the rent a car, got to pay food, got to pay John, our cameraman. There's always equipment needs. So please, if you can, go to statuscoup.live. They take less money. They take less money than YouTube Super Chats. We appreciate the Super Chats too. And even better, sign up as a Status Coup member. That's how we fund this in the field reporting for the long term. We really, need to keep growing our membership. It's statuscoup.com/join. As humbly as I could say it, I don't see a lot of other outlets in the field rolling up their sleeves. So please, statuscoup.com/join. I just put it in the super chat. Colin, if we could bring up the article there to give people more information on Keystone. The sponsor of the Keystone XL crude oil pipeline said Wednesday it is pulling the plug on the contentious project after Canadian officials failed to persuade President Joe Biden to reverse his cancellation of its permits on the day he took office. Calgary-based TC Energy said it would work with government agencies to ensure a safe termination of and exit from the partially built line. Yeah, safe and oil companies, kind of a tough sell there, which was to transport crude oil from the oil sand fields of Western Canada, which is the dirtiest tar sands oil there is, to Nebraska. Construction on the 1,200-mile pipeline began last year when former President Trump revived the long-delayed project after it had stalled under the Obama administration. It would have moved up to 830,000 barrels, 35 million gallons of crude daily, connecting in Nebraska to other pipelines that feed oil refineries on the U.S. Gulf Coast. Biden canceled it in January over longstanding concerns that burning oil sands crude would make climate change worse. So why isn't he canceling the Line 3 pipeline, which does the same thing? Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's a mother fracker, objected to the move, but officials in Alberta, where the line originated, expressed disappointment in recent weeks that he didn't lobby harder to reinstate the pipeline's permit. Alberta invested more than $1 billion in the project last year, kickstarting the construction that has stalled amid determined opposition to the line. So the important tell there, yes, let's celebrate the Keystone XL pipeline being canceled. But if Biden's reasoning was how crude oil, the tar sands oil, is destructive to the climate, then why is his Department of Homeland Security and Border Control flying over at very low levels Native American protesters trying to stop a crude oil pipeline that starts in Canada and goes through Minnesota from happening? So where's the consistency? Credit to Biden canceling Keystone XL pipeline. Why are you not canceling Line 3 pipeline? What about the Dakota Access pipeline? Same thing. They're going through native reservations. They're putting ticking time bombs underneath the Missouri River. So, environmental activists should take a little celebratory victory lap here and now turn your attention to Line 3, Dakota Access Pipeline, and other toxic pipelines. Because make no mistake, Sunrise Movement 2, you can't have a climate agenda if you're supporting expanding new crude oil or natural gas pipelines. Can't have it. So again, it's a good thing that Keystone is no more, but we got to keep the pressure up on Biden and frankly demand that the squad and Bernie put more pressure on this. Biden putting in a few climate things into an infrastructure bill isn't enough if over there he's allowing the fossil fuckers to destroy the planet and indigenous communities. That's it, folks. Again, we're planning this trip, so I hope you can go to statuscoup.live, support us there. Please sign up for our Substack. That's statuscoup.substack.com, statuscoup.substack.com. I'm working on another story about Joe Manchin and the West Virginia Democratic Party that is going to blow your mind. It's blowing my mind. I'm watching the video now, and it's blowing my mind. So we'll have that hopefully tomorrow on our Substack, which again, you could sign up for free. You could also sign up paid. Some articles will be just for paid Substack readers, but a lot of them will be for free. We want to build up our Substack list. So, if you can't support us at $5 a month, you sign up for free. So thank you. I know a lot of people have wanted the Substack for a while. It took us a while because we've been so busy elsewhere, but I'm enjoying it. And I'm really enjoying the written articles that I can then, do video on too. And Jen at some point will be doing articles. We're thinking Tina will do some articles. We might have some guest articles from elsewhere, but we need to be able to grow from it. So we really, really hope if you're enjoying those articles, we really, really hope you'll sign up at statuscoup.substack.com, statuscoup.substack.com. At first, if you want, sign up for free, and hopefully we can move you over to paid at one point. So, and finally, become a member, statuscoup.com/join. That's statuscoup.com/join. I want to shout out a couple new members I saw. We're now at 1,888. 1,888. So welcome, Erica signed up today. Welcome, Augustinas signed up today. And Christy signed up yesterday. And Marcus signed up yesterday. And Anton signed up yesterday. So 12 members away from 1,900. And we need more members. We need more members because it costs money to go out on the road. It costs money to buy new equipment. I'm going to Best Buy right now to pick up equipment because I bought a Nintendo Switch. By popular demand, I will be gaming on Twitch. So I got to go to Best Buy to pick up a couple things to make it all technically work. I hope you want to watch me on Twitch, play video games, and talk politics. I'm still surprised that's a thing, but apparently people get a lot of viewers gaming and talking politics and other nonsense. So I will be playing hopefully Mario Kart, which is my favorite. I did love Super Donkey Kong back in the day. Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know if those games still exist on new systems, but I'm certainly ready to game, baby. And I hope you'll join me on our Twitch. That's Twitch. What is it? Twitch.tv/statuscoup. Jordan and Anat should play Mario Kart. Absolutely. So thank you for watching. I'm not going to be live tomorrow. I believe somebody will. But thank you for watching, and definitely check out our Substack. I'm hoping to drop another piece tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.